guarding the species, and we're looking into, a little bit of the environment, a little bit in terms of bringing certain species back, science, communities and partnerships, driving wildlife recovery. And that's the conversation that we have this morning. Our guest is already in the hot seat this morning. Dr. Robert Aruho is the head of Mount Kenya Wildlife Conservancy and co-chair of the IUCN Antelope Specialist Group, and joins us in the Situation Room this morning. Good morning, Daktari.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Welcome. Karibu sana. Thank you for being here this morning. So we're going to get into this conversation, necessary for us to have at some point, look into a number of these issues. But before we do that, let's welcome you into the Situation Room in Situation Room style. Dennis goes around the African continent. Every week comes from a particular country. We'll share the proverbs. We'd love to get your interpretation of the same.
Yeah, today we are in Malawi, and a beautiful country, because if you think about Malawi, one thing that stands out is the fact that they have Lake Malawi, which then occupies over 20% of the total landmass that the country has. Some of the most beautiful sunsets that you can find in Malawi is because they've taken care of that lake, white sandy beaches at the lake. But let's go to the proverb. Now, the proverb says, most snakes crawl on ground, but we have some that are walking and speak in English. How would you interpret it?
Wow, that's a huge proverb and a huge analogy, and I think it also speaks to us about our human character, how unpredictable. Snakes in the world actually are very peaceful, and they go about their businesses, playing their role in the ecosystem. But when provoked, actually snakes can actually be quite dangerous. Some are poisonous, and some strike without notice. And this also, it just also speaks to us as human beings, because that analogy, some humans, we can be good, but also we can also go to the other side, which can make us poisonous and dangerous. So I think it's a proverb that has double application, both what snakes are, but also what we as humans can be. Yes.
Well said, interpreted, Asante.
Yeah. Definitely. Let's, do a little bit of a round opening up here. When we're talking about bringing back species, what are we talking about? Bringing them back, those who have become extinct? Or is it possible to now start having conversations around preserving those that are actually there?
Yeah, when we talk about bring back species, that term itself is already telling us that something has actually happened.
Okay.
And we are talking about species which are still either extinct or have gotten lost within our ecosystems and environment where they used to be. And they are no more. For example, the animal could not be existing within our own ecosystem, but it's still existing in the zoo somewhere. But it also could be that these species used to occur in a certain location, but now they are constrained in a particular location or on our planet, in our country. A species which used to be widespread might now be confined in a particular environment. And that means that if you are to bring it back, you have to take it back to the environment where it used to be.
Yeah.
Or it could be actually a species whose numbers are actually declining at a faster rate, and we need just to come in and assist the population to grow.
I mean, when you look at the species and degradation of the same of animal species, that has been mostly because of human activity and human interference with the normal way, the nature of these species. But one then asks the question, even while at that, as we try to bring back these species, are we addressing the root cause of the problem? Because, let's talk about the northern white rhino. Why exactly are we there? We are where we are with the northern white rhino because of human activity, poaching, because for some weird reason we think the rhino horn is of medicinal value. So are we addressing us as humans and the destruction we do to these environments?
Yeah. For us, really, it has to be a pronged approach. Anything that involves a human dimension, because we are talking about a human dimension and an environmental dimension. And for us to be able to wholesomely recreate the scenario that used to give the species thrival and survival in the past, we have to approach this holistically. But the human dimension is very, very critical, especially where species decline has been largely due to human-driven situations. If you talk about the northern white rhino, this was a really human-driven situation because this was intensive poaching, recklessness of those who were managing the protected areas that time, because the northern white rhino used to be in Uganda during the days of Idi Amin, about 360 of them. But I mean, the government watched on as poaching was intensifying because the guy was not interested in species management. So now the first situation that had to be addressed in such a area is to government stabilize, address issues of policy, and then start now the species recovery. Then other situations where you find actually human dimension is due to habitat loss. Then you have got now to do a lot of community awareness to create the importance of the species to the people, the importance of the species in the environment, and also what does the community need to do to bring back the species, and also talk about the socio-economic dimension of that species so that people can appreciate why an elephant actually has to live within our ecosystem. Yeah.
So when we look at emerging innovations in species restoration and recovery, what we're looking at is essentially trying to make sure that you can bring back particular species so that they actually remain in ecosystems. So what are some of these innovations that you're actually looking at that beyond that? And what is the role of science and some of these partnerships in making sure that you can actually do this and get it done?
Science remains an indispensable management tool, especially for what we are managing now. Because if you look at wildlife population management, it's a real art and science. Because you are talking about the biology of the species. You are talking about the ingredients within the ecosystem that help the species to survive. And you're also talking about population monitoring, which we call ecological monitoring. And recently we started getting some very important tools that actually are helping us to ease the work, because you can imagine if you're managing a protected area like Savo, which is over 2,000 square kilometers of protected airspace. How much manpower do you need, for example, to daily be in touch of the situation of what's happening in the park? So now, and also, if you want to do population census, how long does it take? But nowadays, with now technology, you can actually be able to have a drone and census and do like a quick snapshot of the park. That's very there, and get the information you need. When it comes to elusive species, like we are managing the mountain bongo, it's so difficult to go into in the forest every day, count these animals. But now with artificial intelligence, we are able now to have cameras stationed in the place. We train them how to identify animals, so they pick up and say, this is a mountain bongo, this is an elephant, this is a leopard, and that makes now work easier. So from the comfort of your office, you can keep in touch of the situation that's happening on the ground, and that is empowering wildlife for protected. Is empowering wildlife managers to ensure that they are in touch of the situation in real time and address issues in real time. And that's very key. If an elephant strays out of the community, you get an alert that an elephant is going out, and that helps you to actually preemptively prevent human-wildlife conflict.
I mean, when you look at the continent as a whole, one of the biggest resources that we do have is the wildlife, because think of safaris that we have in the continent. Think about in terms of revenue on how what that injects to different countries and to the economies as well. But while at that, then one would hope that, knowing very well this is a resource that we cannot afford to lose, protection of this biodiversity, of these species that we do have in the continent must be a priority. How would you rate the way the continent, the way Africa is protecting its species, its wildlife, so that it is there beyond us?
I think where we stand in a very good place, because I think the value of tourism has been amplified, and I think governments are beginning to appreciate what tourism and our wildlife and our tourism, especially for sub-Saharan Africa, is really wildlife and nature based. So governments are beginning to appreciate that, and you can see many governments are now investing, for example, in airlines. And that is largely really to bring tourists here. So there is that goodwill that is developing, and the consciousness that actually the tourists are coming to see our wildlife. And just to say, one tourist actually, when you look at the tourism value chain, it's a very amazing chain, because you can see how many people we are able to employ by every tourist who comes in here. A tourist will come by our airlines. He will be handled that means a pilot and a crew have a job. At our airport, he's going to be picked by somebody if we skip the airport management. He is not coming with their own car. He's going to take our fuel. He's going to sleep in a hotel built by us. Our mothers and fathers who are selling vegetables and food, they are going to get money. So you can see the importance of tourism value chain, and how many people actually are employed and supported because of tourism. So with this, I believe now our government are really, our governments across Africa, they are really seeing this as a very great opportunity and a great multiplier, because we are earning actually direct foreign currency through tourism. So everybody is seeing tourism as a great opportunity, and that's why we are trying by all means possible to attract the biggest hotel chains, attract the high-end guests here. And I think where we stand is in a very good place, and every government is really, really keen to stabilize tourism and provide the tourism-related services.
Okay, so let's ask. I mean, maybe you've glossed over this a little bit. What is the bongo?
The mountain bongo is a very beautiful antelope, and in 1900s, the mountain bongo used to occur in Kenya, particularly Aberdares National Park, and Mount Kenya National Park, and then Mount Elgon National Park, which is a transboundary park shared between Uganda and Kenya. So the mountain bongo used to occur in Uganda and in Kenya, but then in Uganda, extinction occurred between around 1950s, and the bongo remained hanging on in Kenya. So the bongo is a very beautiful animal. They are large enough, around 250 kilograms for females and around 400 for females. Both sexes have horns, and these horns can grow up to 2 feet, and they are spiral. So it's a very attractive animal. And if we are going to talk now about heritage, for example, I think the bongo is the only animal which is predominantly a Kenyan animal. So if we talk about heritage, bongo is truly Kenyan heritage, because the only animal that we share with the world, but only found in Kenya. So if you go anywhere in the world and find a bongo, you can be 100% sure that this bongo originated from Kenya. And that's makes it very unique, because this is truly our heritage.
What are some of the breakthroughs when it comes to protecting the bongo? Because we've talked about the fact that we used to share it between Kenya and Uganda. Uganda extinct, so then Kenya remains the only country with the bongos. I know recently there are some bongos that were repatriated back to the country. But what are some of the successes that we have witnessed in terms of that numbers are increasing through intentional maneuvers or decisions that have been put in place to ensure that this Kenyan heritage today, that is the bongo, is protected? Because why would I want to see a bongo in the United States? I want to see bongo in Kenya.
Yes. Yeah. One of the breakthroughs we have had, one is that we've been able to breed successfully these animals, because in 2004 that's when the breeding program started. So we've been breeding and building up the numbers. So one of the biggest situations we had to face was when you bring an animal, for example, from the United States. It has no clue about our diseases. The diet is different. The management is different. So making that animal survive here was one of the biggest nightmares. But we have gone through that, and we have hardened these animals, and we started breeding. And in 2002, we actually were able to start introducing these animals to a wild sanctuary on Mount Kenya at the Mawingu Mountain Bongo Sanctuary. I think the first mountain bongo sanctuary in the whole world. So, and we are seeing this was really a cautious step to take, but when these animals reached the sanctuary, unbelievable, they adapted quickly, they produced quickly. We have over 6 births in that area, and this was a very, very strong proof of concept that actually we're in the right track. Then, encouraged by that, that's why you see this year we brought in more bongos from Europe to enhance now our breeding and recruitment, because with those 4 males, it opened up 4 lines of breeding. Each male can be paired with about 5 females, and then the breeding is rapid. So we expect that actually within less than 10 years, we should actually have doubled the population, which is now around 176. We should be able to go to over 300 bongos in the next 10 years. And this is a very great breakthrough. But the most important thing that I see is the awareness we've been able to create on this antelope. Many people, even if it's you who has gone to the national park, you want to see the lion, want to see an elephant. But we've been able to build a profile of this animal to draw attention to the world that actually antelopes matter and the mountain bongo matters most. Yes.
Okay, and so when we're talking about animal conservation, wildlife conservation around Africa, we know countries that had animals and today they have none. What are some of the things that concern you for somebody who's in the forefront of this conservation effort? What are some of the things that concern you about some of the trends that we currently see?
I think when one of the things that are really quite concerning, one is the loss of space for wildlife to roam, habitat loss. Because you believe me, our population is growing, and also the needs of our population. We need housing. We need also where to grow food, support our population. And the protected areas really have been segmented so much because we are looking for land to take care of our housing needs, but also for development and also for our food to eat. So that is taking away space for wildlife. And our protected areas are remaining seriously isolated. So populations which used to cross together and for gene flow, now it's not possible. So that means our human interventions will be amplified to help these wildlife populations mix for us to sustainably grow the genetics. Then number 2, related to that, is also we are seeing a very worrying trend of the emergence of invasive species, plant species. So these invasive species, they are converting our habitats, they are unpalatable to our wildlife, and taking away space for wildlife. So what that will mean is that as long as wildlife does not have enough food to eat, then the population will decline. And this is something very serious. And it requires a lot of investment. It will take a lot of money. You go to a national park, for example, like Nakuru, you'll see the amount of sodium apple that is there. For us to invest properly and remove such, it will take a lot of money. You go to Queen Elizabeth in Uganda, for example, you see the Crostachys cinera, the amount of space it is taking away. It can be eaten by even elephants. So it displaces wildlife a lot, and that takes away our space. And then, of course, the human dimension of poaching. This is where governments continue to invest proactively to combat poaching. But despite all that, poaching for bushmeat continues to be a very serious issue.
Another aspect of conservation then would be innovation and technology that does exist, such that even when you talk about the northern white rhino, we've decided to go genetics. We've decided to go in the labs to try and have these species come back to life. While that is a new way to go, or some of the options that only remain in terms of conservation, what does that inform or tell us when it comes to that species? What does it tell us? Should we be worried by the point you as a researcher, as a protector of these species, you're deciding to go, let us now go to the lab. What has happened for us to end up there?
Yeah, but by the time now we resort to these means, it means a lot has gone wrong. And a lot has gone wrong under our watch. Yeah, so to me, what that tells me that we looked on for longer. So what we are trying to do is that we don't want to have a situation where we are going to sleep down to where you only have 2 animals remaining, like in the northern white rhino. Because one, as African, in Africa, you're not going to have all these financial resources that are going to be available to recover a leopard, that are going to be available to recover a cheetah. So we need to start our action early on, especially when we see some triggers. So that requires us to, regularly monitor our population, understand our trends, understand the threats, and then address those ones earlier. Okay, and where situations warrant us to go in and actively intervene, our intervention should never come too late to come down to 2 animals. You need to start early when you still have a good chance. For the like for the bongo, we still have like 15 abadeas, so we are not starting from a very far end where we are under extreme pressure. We are starting from a good place of hope and a good place where there is need for investment. But it cannot be as now what we'll go through with the northern white rhino, where you start with babies in a test tube, and then from there you move them to the field. So that's a longer journey. And that is possible because you already have scientists outside Africa who are coming to help us. But how much capacity are we building internally that we can be able to take on the next species? So we need to start our action early.
Indeed. So then to come and look at the obvious competition that there is between survival and then recognition of the necessity to keep wildlife, to make that connection. Let's take a break and we'll come back to discuss that. We're talking about preservation of species, essentially keeping them alive, and we'll come back from this quick break and then be able to do that. We're talking this morning on wild this morning, and as we do that, Daktari, I don't know if it's a curse or it's one of those things that we still need to continue competing about when it comes to oftentimes when we see, if you go into the, people talk about an animal that's washed up on shore, and the first thing that people think about is how they're going to eat it. An animal that makes its way into people's farms, the first thing is to kill it, to eat it. There's rarely the conversation about preserving this. In the hearts and minds of many people, it's to be consumed. Is it a conflict? I mean, obviously it's a conflict, but how are we going to get over that? Where the competition here is for people to survive vis-a-vis to think about the preservation of wildlife. How do we deal with that?
I think this is an important issue that we are really we are contending with. I think our urge for meat as Africans
should be studied.
It should be studied. Yeah, even me, when I walk in a restaurant and you serve me food without meat, I would be concerned.
Are you suffering?
I'll be concerned. I think this is where it's a question of balancing livelihoods, especially for people who are living closer to wildlife, and creating this awareness. Because I mean the protein requirement, people want to feed their families, but this has to be well balanced in a way that we can actually raise enough livestock that we can derive this livelihood from, and I believe we still have land. All we need is to understand what will be the best way to actually put our land to optimum use. So we need like agriculture extension services around protected areas to teach people how do you keep your goats actually? How are you able to provide their needs quickly? Because as long as families have their protein source through their livelihoods, if a father has a chicken source for a child, then you not want to take on a risky venture to go and poach. So I think it's really to support the the immediate communities around protected areas, better ways of farming, how they can utilize their space, and also to appreciate that actually wildlife will pay them better. Once they start seeing the direct rewards of coming from the wildlife, benefiting them through livelihood incomes, I think that will also sort some of these problems. At the moment, if they don't see the opportunity, I think I read in Konjima Wildlife Reserve in Namibia that if it pays, it stays. So the communities want to see, does it pay? If it pays them, then it stays. Yeah.
Let's talk about veterinary medicine. With all these millions and millions of population of wildlife in the country, or even in the continent, one would also assume that we have enough personnel that will be able to look after these animals whenever they fall sick, or even just for research and development to know how they can produce better, because technology informs that, right? Now, when you get into veterinary medicine today, one would be concerned, because even in our homes, you'd find many have their cats and dogs that don't see the vet. Why? Because I don't know where a vet is. I am not cultured to be taking these animals to see the vet. So with the burden that we see then as a continent with regards to veterinary medicine, how difficult is that making the conservation of these species in the continent?
Yeah, you talk about. I think while veterinarians as a profession, we are very few, and then when you now start specializing, like I've done in wildlife management, actually you become fewer. One, it takes really passion. If you love it, then you can do it, and then it's sometimes it's also a daring game, because you are going to be working with animals which are not domesticated. So it really requires another sense of courage and passion to mix together. And then also, we are coming from a generation where they will say nature takes its course. And where we stand, nature cannot take its course, because we know that there are human dimensions that are affecting wildlife, where now we have to come in and help. For example, an animal caught in a snare, it's not an animal's making. That's not nature taking its course. It's a snare introduced by a human being. So humans have to go in and remove the snare. So I think that appreciation of conservation veterinary medicine practice was not there in the past. But now the trend is actually changing. I think we are making a huge difference. You can see like active medicine has been able to build back the gorilla population in Uganda, Rwanda, together to now the species being endangered, from critical endangered. You can see the achievements we are making on the Bongo because of active medicine. So I think there is that growing trend of investment in veterinary services for wildlife. And we are encouraging wildlife conservation authorities to really embrace employing veterinarians to tackle some of these emerging issues that we are facing in wildlife conservation.
How does the conservation or preservation of forests and cover affect the proliferation of wildlife, number one, or even, offer a protection for them? In that conversation, when we talk about having trees, foliage cover, we don't often connect it with how it protects wildlife. We think about how it then protects the environment, and we can ensure that there's rainfall. How do the two work together?
There are generic importance of forests. For example, the air that we breathe, modulated by the forest. Protection of our rivers, because they provide that cooling effect and slow down the runoffs. But I think one of the things we don't appreciate is actually forests actually are a home to wildlife, just like we need houses and shelter. So imagine if you lost your house, for example, maybe through a fire, through a flood. You are in a very serious situation. Now, when we cut down our forests, that means actually there's going to be stranded wildlife with no home. So that's a very huge disadvantage. And not only that they don't have a home, but also you have cut their granaries, because that's where their food is. So forests are extremely important, especially for forest-dependent species, not only because because of their major source of rivers, they are not only because they are of our oxygen, but importantly, these are critical wildlife habitats, and there are some wildlife which cannot survive, like a bongo. A bongo is an entirely forest animal, and a specialist of the forest in that it lives in a forest of 2,200 meters above sea level. You eliminate that forest, you have eliminated a species. So habitats, forests are very critical in that sense.
Yeah. So one then asks the question, can development and preservation of species taking care of our diversities work hand in hand? Because there are two thoughts to this. There are those who say development is a brick and mortar, buildings, roads, we move. There are those who say development is overarching every other thing. You take care of your species, you take care of your wildlife, you take care of the environment as well as you do your roads and everything else. Then that is a holistic development where nothing, including the animals, are not left behind, because then you will be investing in veterinary. Can development and protection of species and natural resources work hand in hand? And if not, what must we all do? Because it's not only your fight, it's not only the government's fight, it's for everybody, including communities, to join in.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting argument. But when you look at actually the most developed countries, take an example of Norway, take an example of Canada. These are highly developed countries.
Yep.
Look at the kind of environment they have around themselves. They have some of the biggest forests. They have some of the biggest wildlife, because they have demonstrated actually they need their wildlife, their forest, and the animals to live alongside environment, to live alongside their development needs. So I think it's a conscious balance that we have got to really, really make, and it is possible. And it requires us to thoughtfully plan our development. For example, don't let development pass through a sensitive area. That can be avoided, okay? That can be avoided by very good land use planning. Then also, where we destroy, we can compensate. You should also compensate by the same amount of land on the other side, so that at least I can, if I cut trees around here, I can actually replant them on the other side. So for me, it's about our consciousness in how we plan development and our vision for the future. Because today you might say, okay, this wildlife is just a forest, but tomorrow if you're going to restore that forest, it must cost you much more than the value of the road.
Yeah.
So I think we just need that conscious balance when we are planning our developments.
What's the relationship between governments and this apparent policy that needs to take place? Because governments, have different agenda at different times. It's not just one track. How then does policy the policy of this protection and conservation come and play in line with what a government agenda might be of the day? How do you work that around?
I think government will always give direction and an overarching policy, and we just have always come in private sector, the people, the researchers, and government usually want information. And information really that is also objective and not perceived in a way that is threatening the government's agenda. So we just need to create that mutual conversation table where we can be able to contribute to the government policies and be able also to alert government, because government is made by the people. And I believe, for that matter, citizens who are also conscious about the need of their country. So I think we just need to continue engaging, continue providing data and information, because sometimes you find some decisions are being taken because there is no information or data. And also citizens also to amplify their voices, because when people are joining government, some of them come in when they're elected, for example. So do citizens air out their voice, what they want the government to be as the agenda? So I think it's really a mutual relationship that we need to foster between government and the people and the private sector and organizations working in the environment, to ensure that there is conversation flowing, information is generously contributed, so that also at the end of the day, government is able to make a conscious decision supported by data and information available.
You look at African governments, even if it's just a discourse around climate change and how it's affecting animals, Africa is seen as a country that contributes the least amount to destroy the environment, but suffers the most, 4%. So if you do 4% and divide that across all the 54 countries, it is minute, But that notwithstanding, that Africa is on the forefront in leading this conversation around conservation and taking care of environments, because we know the pinch, right? But is Africa united from where you sit in terms of conservation, in terms of wildlife protection? Because Uganda lost their bongos because they did not use it. That's an African problem, because it is an animal that can only be found in this continent.
Yeah.
So is Africa speaking in one voice when it comes to conservation and what needs to be done?
Yeah. I think it's. I've been part of some conversations that have been going on, especially conservation of our flagship species like rhinos. Yeah. And what is emerging actually, we are now beginning to get a consulted voice, which was lacking because we thought actually we were separated. But wildlife, for example, does not know boundaries. You take an example of our ecosystems, how they cross over and roll over in each other. You go down here, Masai Mara, Serengeti ecosystem, it's one. You go on the other side, Uganda, Congo, Virunga ecosystem is one. You go up in Kidepo Valley National Park, you find Kidepo, Uganda, and Kidepo, South Sudan. That's the same ecosystem. So I think there is now a growing awareness. Actually, we are having wildlife that actually knows no border, and it's high time for Africa to work together. That's why you see, like between Virunga, we have the Greater Virunga Transboundary Cooperation between Uganda, Congo, and Rwanda, to make sure that the gorillas in that Virunga Massif survive, and that has been key to growing the gorilla population higher. So, we cannot escape from this fact that as Africa, this is our wildlife. We can't sit on the fence and wait for somebody to come and give us an agenda of how to conserve our wildlife. So the area we own this, and I see this ownership now is growing of this responsibility. And I think we're on the right track because we are seeing now conscious investment in wildlife conservation and African leaders consciously emerging to take on conservation issues. And I think that's the right direction.
There's still a lot of external, should I call it contribution or interest when it concerns conservation of wildlife in Africa, and that comes in with foreign dollars, it comes in with foreign presence, and almost with foreign dictation in terms of how things are going to run. Is that the preferred position that we should be in at the moment, or should it be a shared responsibility? Or do we welcome anybody who's going to come in and say, well, let's protect?
Personally, I will just give a personal view of what I think. And I think as Africans, we should be the first ones to put something in a basket. And once I am the one who has put my money in the basket, I determine the direction. So for funding which is going to come to us and is going to make us disadvantage our survival and our survival of wildlife, that should be straightforward. No, because we cannot sell our birthright, because the African elephant you see here, this is our birthright.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. If its conservation is going to be dictated by somebody who has no attachment to it because you are being given money, yes, that money is temporal today. But you are going to lose a lot. So I think we need just to weigh. And there are very good philanthropists out there who are willing to contribute to our values. So we need really to be a value-driven sector, so that funding should not in any way compromise our values and the direction we want to go. If we let that happen, then the future is sustainable. But if we don't assert our values, then definitely we're off track and we'll not get the results that we want.
You sit at the IUCN SSC Antelope group, right? But even while at that, one asks the question, what are some of the opportunities that this position then present to the continent in terms of new ways from policy to the public in changing the game when it comes to conservation of the antelope, because when you talk about the antelope, one usually thinks it's a single animal, but it's a conglomerate of different species in there. So what does your position as the chair mean when it comes to conservation?
For me, first of all, this is it's a great opportunity that we have taken on as Africa to lead this conversation and agenda, and I think it gives us a seat of influence to now determine the course on how African leadership internationally should be viewed, to set a pace for conservation, because here we live what we talk about. So I think it gives us a great leverage that we are able not only to share our expertise, but also to let the African voices be heard at an international stage. And I think, to me, this appointment as the IUCN chair for Antelope Specialist Group is very important. And it should also inspire young Africans who are beginning their conservation journey that actually this is the direction we need to go. We need to start influencing the agenda. We need to start projecting our voices, because we are the ones managing real issues on the ground. And our contribution should be reviewed, because we are speaking from a point of reality. So to me, it's a great honor and privilege that we have this opportunity before us, and we will try to maximize it, to champion not only our conservation agenda for antelopes in Africa, but also be able to tap to bigger community, because it gives us opportunity to understand what's happening everywhere in the world as far as conservation of antelope is concerned. And we're able to benchmark now globally, bring the best practices, and continue our conservation discourse going stronger and action on the ground being impacted.
Do you reckon that it has been said for a very long time that African problems have always been handled outside this continent? That the only way the continent, Africans ourselves, will be able to sort out our problems is by having local solutions to our problems. That it is about time that everybody sat on a table and agreed on the way forward on how to address. Does this position then give Africa an opportunity to sit and agree on what needs to become policy, and that all the countries in the continent implement that? It's not just a policy that is gathering dust, but that it's being implemented for us to conserve, like what you're saying, is our birthright.
Yeah. It's quite interesting that how much solutions actually we have around us. Because, for example, take an example of managing human-elephant conflict. What are we using? Our parents are putting beehives along the elephant escape routes to destroy their crops. They are putting trenches. They are growing pepper. Surely, should you need somebody to come from outside to come and tell you how, for example, to rear bees, how to grow pepper? I think we are the solution, and we have the solution. So I think this opportunity that we have is really to start also sharing with the world our own solutions, because our own solutions work, and our own solutions actually have substance, and they have ownership, and once deployed, they can actually make a difference. So instead of somebody inserting upon you knowledge which is foreign and not well understood by you, we will be able now to contribute to the table this great conversation. And I think that's where now we promote a sense of ownership, but also to see ourselves as part of the solution of what's going on.
Really quick, I know that we talked about tourism and how that can be an income earner, but are there economic benefits around having this conversation on a local and then on a global scale?
Yes, extremely, very much, and very important, because I have a feeling that. And also when you look at some of the surveys have done, even the tourists who come here, they are not conscious about the impact they are going to create For them, they are here to have a good time. But I'm sure if the tourist is explained to at the start of their journey, the impact they are going to create along the way, that tourist will come actually treasuring their journey. For example, when COVID hit, it was so difficult to raise financial resources to manage our protected areas. And I think that awakened everybody to know that actually our parks, our reserves are sustained by tourists. So imagine now we are able to build this into the mind of every tourist that's coming, that they are conscious their travel is going to make a difference. Do you know those people, when they travel, they will even be having a willingness to spend more because they know they are making impact in the lives of people, and they are making the lives of, they are contributing to the greater picture of conservation. Other than photographing the lion, do you understand as a tourist that there is maybe 10 or 4 rangers that actually keep taking care of this lion? So as we start building this narrative properly in the way we are designing our itineraries, the way the information we give to the guests, you'll find actually now people are traveling consciously, and they are able to meaningfully contribute to the conservation, but also appreciate the importance of travel and the great contribution their journeys are making.
Indeed.
Yeah.
He's the head of the Mount Kenya Wildlife Conservancy and co-chair of the IUC and Antelope Specialist Group. Dr. Robert Aruho has been our guest this hour. And thank you for, sharing those insights. A lot more goes into just, going to a national park and staring at the animals, but looking at the ecosystem of economic development, of touristic development, of science and research and conservation. Thank you for sharing those insights with us this morning.
Thank you so much for hosting us and for giving us the platform to be able to share all this with you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to